Heard of antinatalism or nihilism, but have you heard of accelerationism or efilism?
Antinatalism is actually the opposite of nihilism in many ways. This is the first time I'm hearing about the antinatalist bomber. This is a crazy guy that did a bombing apparently and professed to be interested in antinatalism and also efilism, which is an obscure offshoot of that philosophy. And antinatalism is essentially concerned with the prevention of suffering. It posits that it's ethically impossible to justify procreation because it's like you're playing roulette with somebody else's chips. You're deciding for them that they will be thrust into a world full of risk, jeopardy, and the potential of suffering. Whereas if you don't create that person, there's no one there crying out to be created. The non-existent do not miss their existence. So antinatalism says that there is an asymmetry to the question of whether you can justify creating a new sentient creature that is given the capacity to suffer. So that's what that's about, and that's kind of the opposite to nihilism, because nihilism is commonly understood to mean a belief in nothing matters, whereas antinatalism is saying that the kernel of meaning in the universe is sentient suffering, and nothing else really matters. Everything else is kind of inert matter. Our ability to be harmed gives meaning to the universe, is what makes life meaningful, essentially, or sentient experience especially, as part of this thing called life that came from DNA, a self-replicating molecule. In its simplest form, life is consumption and reproduction. It's a molecule trying to perpetuate itself into the future through consumption and reproduction, and the collateral damage of suffering is not considered by life. It is considered a justifiable collateral for perpetuating the DNA molecule is suffering of sentient creatures as it has evolved to be. So antinatalism kind of speaks to that sort of truth, but it's entirely opposite, or rather unrelated to any question of whether you can enjoy your life once you're here, because of course once you do exist, you are tied to intrinsically your own continuation to continue existing and to be as comfortable and happy as you can. And that's cool. That's entirely separate to this question of whether you can decide for some other sentient creature to be made to exist with all of the risk, jeopardy, and suffering that potential comes with it. Again, whereas in non-existent land, in pre-birth land, they're not there going, oh, please let me exist. That's not happening. So that's the asymmetry of the question of whether to procreate. But yeah, unrelated to any question of sort of being able to be happy in your own life and enjoy it if you are privileged enough to be in a position where you can have agency over your own level of comfort. Of course, many don't have that luxury. Some are born into situations that are beyond their ability to sort of control their level of comfort and or being free from suffering. So that's kind of opposite to nihilism, really, in many regards. Efilism is a sort of offshoot from that was invented by a guy on YouTube called Emendham in 2011, when he sort of expanded the idea of antinatalism to acknowledge that the entire animal kingdom is fraught with suffering, and actually, theoretically speaking, a universe with no life would be a net positive because of the fact that there will be no suffering. There would also be no joyful experience, no comfortable experience. But the argument is that if comfort is a baseline, it's not a real, the only meaningful sort of change to, or the only state of being that is concerning is suffering, is a negative state of being. It's saying that there's an asymmetry to that. So a universe with no life is a net positive because suffering has more meaning, has more weight than happy, lovely, walking through the summer meadow, looking at the butterflies, happiness. The suffering has more weight in that equation. So yeah, but that's theoretical. That doesn't necessitate that, oh, that means we have to kill everything, we have to destroy everything, because that input, that is actually antithetical to the core principles of antinatalism, because that would be violating another sovereign sentient creature and causing suffering and pain to others. So it's kind of the opposite of what those philosophies are getting at. But crazy people will latch onto any ideology and be able to misinterpret it and twist it to justify actions that they are more predisposed to carrying out because they have psychological issues. So it's not because of the philosophy, it's because of the psychology that these things happen. It's always because of the psychology in a particular human. It is never because of the philosophy, because philosophy stands apart from and cannot act. It is theoretical. It cannot act and cause things to occur. It's psychology that causes things to occur. So I don't know, it's your video sort of seems to be sort of blaming these philosophies for the actions of this crazy person, and that's not what's going on.